throat got hoarse yesterday. It hadn't gotten much better today. On April 16, 1947, I was 9 years old, living in Houston, and was a student in Miss MacArthur's 4th grade class at Ben Milam Elementary. About 9:15 that morning, I remember that the windows rattled a little bit and shook, but we didn't know until later that night what the reason for that was. In 1951, my dad started a new job at Amico Federal Credit Union, and we moved to 1950 19th Avenue North. Since I was a midtermer, I stayed in Houston living with my grandmother to graduate from George Washington Junior High School. I came to Texas City in January 1952 and enrolled with you in the 10th grade. Since I wasn't there in 47, I have no independent recollections of the explosions. But over the years, I've learned many stories from many friends. I heard about the beautiful orange smoke that rose into the sky that day. My next door neighbor was Joan Voiles. Her dad, Bill Voiles, was working on the dock that night trying to help put out the fire when the second explosion occurred. His body was never found. Sam Welch told me about climbing over the debris going down the stairs at Danforth Elementary. Finally, he made it out into the schoolyard where he met up with friends Eddie Paget and Billy Don McDuffie. My Houston friend and elementary school classmate, Bill Gray, told me that his father was an auxiliary policeman in Houston at the time, and he got called to Texas City during the disaster. His dad told him that one explosion picked him up, shook him, and threw him to the ground. He had several bruises, but he finally made it home 3 days later. My brother Jerry, who lives in College Station now, is married to Carol Edinburgh. Her brother Don was a teenager at the time, and he told of driving a hearse for Fred Linton, carrying bodies to the makeshift gym at the high school gymnasium. A makeshift morgue, rather. Yeah. I think it was Robert Abercrombie that told me that after the explosion, when he was finally reunited with his parents, his dad put him in the car and was driving north on Highway 146, headed toward Pasadena so that they could stay with relatives there. He came upon a man running alongside the road on Highway 146. Mr. Abercrombie pulled alongside the man and asked if he wanted a ride. The man said, "No, sir, I'm in a hurry." My friend Jim Fiedler told me that he was living in Kingsville, Texas, where his dad worked on the King Ranch. He remembered feeling the shock of the explosion from the travel that traveled across the Gulf of Mexico about 250 miles. Excuse me. In about 2005, the Galveston Daily News started taking pictures of the disaster survivors and published that picture on the anniversary of the date of the explosion. Over the years, I've gone to that picture taking several times and listened to their stories. This year, I visited with Carl Trepanier, who was a year ahead of us in high school, and he talked about his recent book called Rise Up. It's a novel about the courage, resilience, and determination of the ordinary people who lived through the disaster. There was Louis Broussard, who owned a ship supply business and struggled with the memory of an overbearing father. There was Clayton Malvo, a young black man who worked on the docks and fought to give his younger sister a better life. It tells about Grace Hanson, a young woman who had just been released from prison in Chicago, who sought refuge with her sister in Texas City. And then there was Father Joseph Irons, who balanced the everyday needs of his parishioners with those of the greater Catholic Church. If any of you are interested, Carl's book is available on Amazon. This fictionalized account dealt with the individual pain and suffering that those that lived there in that day experienced, and how the residents slowly rose from the ashes to live again. I'm sure that most of you that graduated with me remember that day, and you have stories of where you were and what you were doing. And like those residents that rose up from the ashes, we too have risen up. We, the class of '56, have become doctors, dentists, nurses, teachers, preachers, Army and Air Force officers and enlisted, CPAs and executive officers, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, and even grandparents. Class of '56, may we always remember where we came from and where we're headed. Go Stings.